How's my chat doing, man? How we sounding, everybody? We good to go? All right, good to see everybody there. Kenny, good to see you. Big D, Bill, nice. Let's get this going. Out of the gate, JT, as we are live from Media Day, Raiders headquarters in Henderson, Nevada. Welcome in. I'm excited to be here as we kick off a new week on the flagship of the Silver and Black, Raider Nation Radio, on what is my longest day of the year. Today is the day. It's on my bingo card. We just hosted a 4-hour show for the Raiders on their team YouTube channel, 4 hours with the head coach, the GM, the quarterback, Max Crosby, everybody. You'll hear some of that. We got 2 hours here on radio and then 3 more tonight on Mad Dog Sports Radio. So this day is the day that I look forward to the most. It's the longest content day for me all year. I have longer days that start off at the stadium and then end at the end of late Sunday night. But this one I'm excited to be here. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Sports was epic over the weekend. The greatest tennis match of all time, definitely on the Mount Rushmore of all time. And the countdown to the U.S. Open in golf. We got the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals happening. And then everybody's packing up and figuring out what to do before football season starts. And that's the focus of the monologue as we are ready to roll here. If you want to get into the show after not talking since a couple of days, I just got back from a Raider wedding. A former eye doctor of the Raiders got married in Beverly Hills. So my wife and I were in Beverly Hills all weekend long in LA. Made a lot of good memories. Went to a beautiful wedding. I've been to a wedding in a while, black tie wedding. So it fit well with the silver and black theme. And we traveled in and out. There's a little bit of chaos going on in LA. We'll leave that for the other shows, but we got out of there back home and we're good to go here. So if you want to get in here, I interviewed everybody today, along with Paul Gutierrez from Raiders.com and the future Hall of Famer Eric Allen. You'll hear some of those interviews coming up here and we'll play them. Then we should have a couple of live guests. The Aaron Rodgers news of him landing in Pittsburgh, not a big surprise there, but something I want to talk about. And then the NBA and the Stanley Cup Finals have been brilliant. We knew we were going to have a blowout in Game 2 in the NBA, but the Stanley Cup Final that we've seen so far through a couple of games puts this as one of the all-time great Stanley Cups off to a good start. I don't know if you're watching or not, unless you let me know on social media, JT the Brick LV. That's where you'll find me on Instagram, on X JT the Brick, and we are streaming live. And we got a lot of contests coming up and giveaways and what we're going to do this summer to get the numbers even flowing more on YouTube at JT the Brick YT. If you're watching right now, new Raider gear, a couple of new Raider shirts to kick off Media Day, and we're live in the facility of the Silver and Black, and that's a good place to be. So that's where I want to go. Interviewing everybody today is an absolute honor and a pleasure. We started off right at 8 a.m. 4 hours ago with Pete Carroll, then moved to John Spytek and Geno Smith and Max Crosby and Jackson Powers Johnson and Jeremy Chin and Jack Besh. And the players, Dante Thornton, a couple of players I've never met or interviewed before, who are really kind with their time. And what happens on media day is the players come in and they take all their pictures for the year. So this is your headshot day. You probably had it in high school or college where you take your big picture. Well, that's what's happening today. So everybody's in full uniform with their pads. And when you watch Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football and they introduce the players, that's the picture they take today. So they're all here. They're coming in stages, and they go through what we call a car wash. They just go from one booth to the next, a social media booth. Then they sit down with us on radio and TV. Then they go to another booth. They take their headshot. They keep going, and then next week, the rest of this week is going to be really important as we're still having OTAs here before the team takes their break. And when the team takes their break, we take a little bit of a break every time this year. And then we do summertime radio, where we talk about some of the topics that will get us through the summer, which we're excited about. And then we get back, and it's next thing you know, it's training camp, and then the football actually matters a lot with the preseason games and what we're doing there. So we have a very, very, very busy couple of days here. And then afterwards, the thing shuts down. Our radio station doesn't, our advertisers don't, but we got to get you through the dead zone, and we'll do that with some topics that hopefully you'll be interested in. So if you want to talk about anything that happened over the weekend, I watched some sports, not as much as I normally do, but I'm all prepped up. I'm up to date, especially on the Raider front. We had Michael Mayer on, which was great to talk to Big Mike and to see how good he looks. Oh, my God, the guy looks like he's a monster, in great shape, and you get a chance to see these guys up close and personal. Our number is 702-365-9200. We're brought to you by PT's, the best happy hour in town, 5 to 7, midnight to 2. If you're looking to go watch games, watch sports, no better place than PT's with half-price drinks twice a day with the best happy hour in town. All right, before I get back to the Raiders, a couple of things I wanted to talk about here as we open up the show. The NBA Finals, look, you have two small market teams. If the weather's not good, like it's been raining, cats and dogs back east, you got nothing else to do. You got nothing else to do. It's raining so much back there. You watch the NBA Finals. And if you don't watch the Stanley Cup Finals, you're just missing out on sports. But to see that OKC would jump back after losing game one on a buzzer beater by Halliburton, you knew they'd bounce back and win game two. Final call as Oklahoma City evens the series.
The Thunder win game two big, 103-107 over the Indiana Pacers.
All right, so that's Thunder Radio on the call. So no surprise there. You're going to get a blowout, especially when a road team wins game one. You're going to get a blowout in game two as that home team's going to win a game. And that's exactly what happened there. So that's a good series. I think the series now, I had OKC in 5. I said 6, but my gut told me 5. Now I think it's going to go 7. I think these two teams are really evenly matched. For Rick Carlisle, he knew that they had to steal a game, get one on the road. At OKC, they were able to do it, even though they didn't look good in game two.
First half, obviously, was a big problem. And we just played poorly. A little better in the second half, but you can't be a team that's reactive and expect to be successful or have consistency. So we're going to have to do a lot better on Wednesday.
Yeah, and they'll bounce back, and they'll go back to some home cooking with their home crowd, and it'll probably get right back into the series. I think they'll win one game at home. We'll go back to Oklahoma City for game 5, tied up at 2. And in the Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup's been unbelievable. Marchant and the way Florida won in the 2 overtime games, and Edmonton, the crowd being just stunned as they lose game 2. But even the series at 1, just fantastic there. Also wanted to mention over the weekend, Alcaraz's win in the French Open. I grew up going to tennis, playing tennis as a kid. My dad had tickets to the U.S. Open. So I grew up in a tennis family and watched the history of tennis. I was live. I went to see McEnroe play, and Lendl and Connors and Agassi and Pete Sampras. I am here to tell you that that was arguably the greatest tennis match ever played in any era, going back to Rod Laver. going to Nadal and Federer, Djokovic. When you go back at everything that you've seen throughout the decades of tennis, you just witnessed what was probably the greatest match of all time. Down 0-2, match point in the third, Alcaraz comes back and wins that. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in a final that goes to a tiebreaker and he wins. So he was left for dead. The match was about to end. He comes all the way back in over 5 hours. So look, I don't take a lot of tennis calls, but I say the same thing about tennis as I do NASCAR and other sports. When something iconic happens in a sport, golf, Tiger winning the Masters, you got to get in on it. You got to get in on it. And if you're not watching it, you missed out on one of the greatest sporting events I ever saw. I was in LA. I woke up and watched the fifth set after breakfast, and I could not leave. Everything was on hold until that tennis match ended. So I want to just say that was incredible sportsmanship and one of the greatest athletic performances I've ever seen. All right, so the NFL news today that matters, there's a really good cornerback available. Jair Alexander was just let go by the Green Bay Packers. Would he be a good fit with the Raiders? Hell yeah, he would. He's a starter. He's a starter. And we had John Spytek on today. We did not talk about this player because it's not the right thing to do. We're doing media day here. But the Packers informed Alexander earlier today that he'd be released. And according to this, you're talking about a player here. They tried to find middle ground on a deal. Mark Murphy, the president of the Packers, appeared to confirm that Alexander's release while at a charity golf tournament on Monday. And that is a really, really good player. So as we take a look at the Raiders and the money that they still have left to spend, Alexander appeared in just 7 regular season games each of the past 2 seasons and did not play after November 17th last year, despite practicing on a semi-regular basis. He was on injured reserve the final week of the season and has knee surgery. What he said was a torn PCL, and he's coming out of it. He still finished second on the team in past breakups with 7 and had, the guy was pretty good in regards to interceptions, a good player. So I'm not talking about actually him being a lock for the Raiders, but I think a topic that I wanted to open up with today, and you'll hear John Spytek coming up here, is do you believe that the Raiders need to go get another player? I do. Do you believe that the Raiders need to go? They don't have to, but the need is at corner. The need is at corner, and you could say the need. I think they got enough linebackers, but I don't know how many of the linebackers are impact players. They got a lot of guys, but how many of these guys are going to be guys that could be Pro Bowlers? When I evaluate talent for the Raiders, I always ask, if the player's not going to be a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro, great, welcome to the Raiders. We need guys like that. But everybody should strive to be a great player in this league. And I think the Raiders need more great players on the defensive side of the ball. I've told you that for years about the right tackle position. I like DJ Glaze. If there's a better player out there than DJ Glaze, who's been to multiple Pro Bowls and he gets released, then that player should be here, potentially to compete for a spot. But the sense I got today, and look, for those who say I say this every year, you're right. Look, I'm not going to fight you on this. You could use that via social media if you want. But every year, hope springs eternal, and you really believe that the team is on the right path of improving. I don't care if it's Dave Ziegler, if it's Tom Telesco, and now that's John Spytek. You believe, you think, and you believe that the team got better in the offseason, correct? You should. But this year, it's interesting. You lose Robert Spillane. Devontae Adams left during the season. So you look at the team and you go, is the roster actually better? Well, take it from me today. After interviewing the big players on this roster, this is a completely different team. Absolutely a different moxie and a unique presence that I saw today on the field as we just finished up our coverage of Raiders Media Day. Everybody understands their role. Everybody is a freak when it comes to competition. That's all everybody cares about now is competition. Competition, competition. So that's what they're doing there. And when it comes down to the ability to play at a high level, there are several young players who I truly believe can step in and start the first game in New England. Jack Best, Dante Thornton, no doubt in my mind they can do that. They have offensive weapons now that are significant. So does that make the Raiders a contender? It depends on what you think contender is. Super Bowl contender? Probably not year one. You never know. Contender to win the AFC West? I have too much respect for what Kansas City's done to sit here and say the Raiders are going to win the AFC West when they came in last. I do have, things I have to stay true to. But I will tell you, I think that the Raiders are going to win games that they wouldn't have been able to win last year with the coaches, who I liked a lot, and the players, and many of them are back. This is just a different team. This is a team that if you get on the field, you have proven that you went through a gauntlet of Raiders training camp and OTAs. In order to say that you're a Raider who starts, you have got to come through this portal and prove to everybody on a consistent basis that you competed every day and you're just a lot tougher than they expected you to be. So there are a few starters. John Spytek, you'll hear in the interview, said it best. There are a few starters that you just know. Colton Miller's going to start. Max Crosby's going to start. Jacoby Myers is going to start. Man, there's a lot of players here that are going to play. And maybe a couple of them who are going to start over your favorite player. Over a player that you like, that you have penciled in as a starter. Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast. This is a different team. Tell you, I was really impressed with Jack Besh. His brother was killed in the terrorist attack in New Orleans. And I don't know how that kid's dealing with this. I don't know how you can go from losing your brother, your big brother, to coming in here and playing football. Let alone being able to be that good. And all he talked about was his faith. He spent 10 minutes out of the 10 minutes talking about his faith in God and why he believes he's here at this time because of his faith. I wouldn't know that if I didn't have the ability to sit down and be a part of the broadcast today. Now I have a completely different perspective of that young man and what he's going to be able to do. Also, Michael Mayer. We all know that Michael Mayer was a guy who was out for most of last year for personal reasons. It's none of my business what the personal reasons were. He had an excused absence from the team. He looks like he's completely 100% ready to go. There's another player who didn't play much last year, ready to play and compete. And then finally, we saw Ashton Genty come in. Wow. You see Ashton, he wasn't in his uniform. His session wasn't until later, but he was able to walk up there and sit down and shake all of our hands. What a gentleman. What an unbelievable gentleman Ashton Genty is. And Eric Allen and Paul Gutierrez asked some really good questions to him about his expectations with all of this. I'm a believer this June 9th, 2025, that the best chance the Raiders have to making the playoffs, that's right, the playoffs, which would be 10 wins, is their offense is going to have to be borderline explosive and really good. Not average. When you have the worst rushing attack in football last year, dead last, you're not competitive. They were not competitive in the running game. When you have Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback, you need quarterback help to get a better quarterback. They got that. And then the players that they drafted, you can at least see, looking them in the eye, and we spoke to a few of them, that 4 or 5 of the drafted players have the ability to be starters, which is really important to me. Because young players you want to develop. It's going to take a while to develop a young player. It could take 2 or 3 years. Look at Tyree Wilson. He came into the league injured, drafted 7th overall. In his 3rd year now, you're just hoping for the best. A guy like Jack Bess and Dante Thornton, you want them on the team the first series of game 1. I want to see those guys on the first series or drive of game 1. That Besh is coming in on 2nd and long or 3rd down, and Thornton is going to run a go route. Might be the first play of the season. I don't know. Those guys are ready to go with a rookie in Ashton Genty, who's going to be ready to go, and a couple of young offensive linemen, which I don't know. They might be able to start. Who knows? I don't know how Pete Carroll's going to do it. But this is an offense that could save the Raiders season because the defense is a work in progress. Pretty good pass rush, Max Crosby. I think some decent players on defense, but they are not littered with a Pro Bowl team on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to have to play and prove that Pete Carroll picked the right guys to stay here. Oh, and one other point on Pete Carroll and who's going to stay here or not. My opinion is Pete Carroll is going to force some controversy. It's going to look natural, but there's going to be competition with good players going into those preseason games. Now, I don't know what he's going to do. I mean, he might not want to play a starter, or he might want to play the starters. He'll tell us when he's ready. But I just have a feeling in my mind that there's going to be some shakeups around here. There's going to be some players that are playing, and you're going to go, oh, I remember JT said that on June 9th. Didn't say someone specific, but some starter is not going to start because there's some kid in this building who's ready to take his job. That's part of my big takeaway, and I'm excited about that. So there's a lot of upside, and I think this roster overall, they're all bought into Pete Carroll. There's no gossip. There's no negative energy. There's no, hey, what about last year when this happened? That train has left. This is a brand new organization led by the combination, of course, Mark Davis, the owner of the organization, Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, John Spytek. I mean, John Spytek hired a bunch of guys with Super Bowl rings to come in to reset the personnel department to do everything that he wants to do. So I find this encouraging, exciting and encouraging, because now all they got to do is go win games. And I can't predict who's going to win the game. I don't know who's going to win the game. I hope the Raiders win every game. They're not. But how do you predict who's going to win a Pacific game? But these players are pumped up, and they look good. I mean, Jackson Powers-Johnson noticeably lost 15 pounds. I thought it was more. He looks like he's an animal ready to get after someone. And we had a great conversation with Max Crosby, and Max has always got something great to say about his charity work, his foundation, everything that he's doing to become a better person and to become a better human being. That's what he's all about. We got a guest a little bit later on in the show to talk about Aaron Rodgers, which I want to get into today. I think that's a very important conversation that we're going to have coming up here in a little bit, because it's important that we get guys in here. And look, I want to talk about this because it's a big story. Jarrett Bailey from Believe in Steelers is going to join us at the top of this hour, coming up here at 1 p.m. Pacific, on Aaron Rodgers and the fact that he's the face of the Steelers. He is. I don't care if you think it's TJ Watt. Aaron Rodgers is a celebrity, a superstar. He inks the deal's $13 million, but there is some incentive to go up there. I think that's a fair price for a living legend who's going to walk in there and see what's going to happen there. There's also ownership news around the NFL after Jim Irsay has died as the owner of the Colts recently. The next generation has been made official. The Colts announced today that their ownership reorg after Jim Irsay's death will include his father's wishes. Irsay's 3 daughters have assumed co-ownership of the team, which each getting respective roles within the franchise. So that's interesting. Carly, his eldest daughter, and I saw her at his exhibit, she'll assume the role of owner and CEO. That's his daughter, Carly Irsay Gordon, which is really a great day for women in sports and a women owner now who's going to take over here for day-to-day operations there. Number 702-365-9200. I wait around all weekend to host this show. I hope you want to get in here and sound off. If you watched any of our coverage of Media Day, we'd like to get your opinion on maybe some of the interviews you like best, some of the athletes, the players in general that you thought made the best impression. I'll be able to share those stories coming up here pretty shortly. When we come back, we're going to dive in with our first interview. I think it's the one to play, Pete Carroll. So we'll start off the show coming up next in about a few minutes on Pete Carroll and his infectious ability to compete. Tito's Handmade Vodka. What a story. What an American success story. My go-to vodka is Tito's. We got a big week of radio here. It's Media Day, live from Henderson. Deep Henderson, the Raiders facility, as we kick it off live on YouTube at JT the Brick YT. All right. Okay. Let's have Pete Carroll ready. Thanks. What's happening, everyone? Good to see you. We're going to be playing some interviews. Here. So if I pop away for a minute or two, I'll make sure you're able to hear it. Crush the like button if you can. Yeah, I'm happy if you got a chance to watch a little bit of it today. Where's that Charger fan that likes to sit in the chat? Where is he? I don't see him here today. Yeah, we're going to get some bricklayer T-shirts. We got a couple of things that are going in there. Investing some money back in YouTube. Yeah, Amber had a really cool coat on. Yeah, I think Alexander's an option at the right price. Yeah, I think he's a really good player. The piano man, right. Bobby, how long is Pete going to be? Okay.
Please bet responsibly.
Hi, this is Manny at FetchATech, the best plumbing and AC company here in Las Vegas. And you know, I have to tell you that I love my dog, Holly. And that's why we'll give you 10% off any plumbing or AC repairs if you have a pet in the house. Not kidding. At FetchATech Air Conditioning and Plumbing, we show up on time, we keep our word, and are as loyal as your favorite dog. So what you waiting for? Call or Google FetchATech and get an automatic 10% discount on repairs or get a $49 AC tune-up. And as we all know, you can always trust someone who loves dogs. So call FetchATech. We're doggone good and we're doggone fast. And if you have a pet, you get 10% off plumbing or AC repairs and a $49 tune-up. So call FetchATech right now at 702-509-2000 or just Google FetchATech. That's 702-509-2000 or Google FetchATech and we'll come a-running.
FetchATech, service that's a freedom.
Gambler's bonus hits again. On March 1st, Keith hit 4 5s, clearing his Gambler's bonus 4-of-a-kind bingo card for over $10,000. Keith hit big and so can you with Gambler's bonus. It's why you play the game.
Welcome back to the JT the Brick Show, brought to you by PT's, the best happy hour in town, 5 to 7 p.m. and midnight to 2 a.m.
Hopefully it goes back and forth all the time. You know, today was the defense's day. The other day, the offense kind of won the day. So that's kind of how we expect it to go. If you notice the last 5, we're working the rookies against the rookies, and see who wins those last 5 plays. So it is part of the mentality that we've got to find ways to always keep emphasizing about competing. And so it's working out okay.
That was Pete Carroll from last week. So the Raiders will have organized team activities the next 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we'll be all over that here with our in-depth team coverage here on the flagship of the Silver and Black. JT, back with you. We are brought to you by Modelo, the fighting spirit of Modelo, the number one beer in America as we continue on. So for Media Day is important not only for the players and the coaches, but also everybody who works in the building, the staff, business people that work there. They all get their headshots. It's a day where everybody just feels good. They come to work feeling good about the start of a new year, even though we got some time. We got some time before training camp is going to take place here. So last year I thought it was a training camp last year that had good intentions. I mean, I love Costa Mesa, man. I enjoyed that. I ain't lying about that. You know, having a room in Costa Mesa at Newport Beach for a month was kind of a nice perk for me. And we love Napa, love going up to Napa. But training camp's going to be here. And training camp is going to be here, and a lot of fans are going to know that the Raiders are going to be around town, and they're going to be working hard in the dog days of summer. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with what Pete Carroll wants to do to give players time off, ramp it up, what practice is going to be harder than others. Pete Carroll is something else, and he was the first one that we interviewed today as he came to the set at Media Day earlier today.
Well, let's welcome in the head coach of the Silver and Black, and Pete Carroll. And Coach, this has got to be exciting. We got a fan element here today. How you feeling?
We always like that.
Yeah.
Good to have him here.
Let's begin with just talking about everything that you're loving about the situation in Vegas, the building, rookie OTAs, and how you're loving the style of what you're doing with this team.
Well, everything has kind of gone as planned so far. So it's nice to have a plan and it's kind of fitting together. We've come in here roaring with approach and philosophy and mentality and all of that, and stuff that we've been working on for years. To see it, kind of formulate again has been exciting. It warms my heart to see that we're having fun and we're working really hard, and guys are, you can tell that they can sense that there's something changing. And so a lot of expectations for us. We're going for it. We're not holding back. We're not looking for any, give us some grace period or any of that kind of stuff. That's not how we're going about this. We want to go get it right now. And I think the players feel that sense of urgency, and they're showing it by the way they practice.
And Coach, you've been doing this for a long time. You're one of the greatest guys to ever do it on defensively, head coach. Talk to us a little bit about those steps and that process when you're in this initial phase and you're here for Media Day, and what is that feeling like, and when you get that feel for the players and how they're kind of adjusting to the system?
Well, the reason I was late, Patrick and I were up there, scratching some stuff out, putting together, collecting our thoughts after all of this time we have work. We're melding, our ideas, thoughts, and how the players are taking to it. We're looking all the way down the season, already. We're looking at games and styles of play that we have to match up for and all that. So that's why it's late.
That's okay.
Right from the board to here. It's a really active, challenging time, and I love every second. It's been a freaking blast for our coaches and myself to take on the challenge and all that. So it doesn't stop. The angst may come from we've got 3 more days of practice, and then there's 6 weeks, and then we're going. We're almost at the end of this phase, and so we're just trying to make sure that we're covering it all, getting it just right, and really working hard to match it with our guys. Okay. And as we've learned a lot, we've picked up a great deal of information on them. Try to put them in the greatest spots for them to really show. And that's really the whole program is about figuring out who these guys are, and then trying to maximize that. And so it's really having a great time.
Pete, in having covered you for a while, I actually covered you way back in LA when I was at the LA Times and you were at USC. So I saw it firsthand at Heritage Hall. I was covering mostly basketball, but you guys were out there playing shirts and skins, and you were always shirts. So I recognize that game. But in terms of when anybody talks about you, they talk about the energy, they talk about the enthusiasm, they talk about all that. Jacoby Meyer said you must be taking some extra kind of supplement for the kind.
It's not the first time somebody said that.
So how does that translate onto success on the field, or is that simply just the basis for everything that's happening with whatever program you're in, whether it's USC, Seattle, here in Las Vegas now?
Yeah, well, we really operate. There's some principles, behind what we're doing, and
One of them is something good is just about to happen. There's this unrealistic optimism that I know that my mom helped me, live with, and that it gives us an outlook and an attitude that we're going to make something of what is presented to us, and so I want to try to max it out every day. And if I can't do it, I can't expect the players to do it. So I'm not having any trouble. I'm not worn down. I'm not, oh God, well, how am I going to get it up this day? I don't feel like that at all. I feel like every day is just another chance to go at it and demonstrate that we can live it on a really high level and high expectations and standards. And so fortunately, I've had enough years to figure out the language that it takes to translate that and convey it to the coaches and the players. And so we've got a way that we do our business, and interestingly, I'm asking about this, but we did a class this spring at USC and taught exactly the same stuff to a bunch of students, and to see what would happen, to see how that it would take it on. And it was so clear that we're talking about the attitude that you bring on a regular basis to everything that you're challenged by, moment to moment. How are you going to look at it? Are you going to take this as a competitive moment or not? And that's kind of how we live. And so when we do that, then it gives us a chance to push people. It gives us a chance to challenge them. It counts on us having to figure out who's who. It's very much a relationship-based approach, and so with all of that, it's got to be competitive. It's got to be upbeat. It's got to be ongoing. And so that I got to live that way. That's just where I like being. So,
Coach, I
don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about roster development. How much do you love the undrafted free agents? When you're in the war room with John Spytek and you're waiting for a player to see if he's going to be there, you get your guy. Now you bring him in and you're coaching him up. How much passion do you have when you see a roster making it better every day?
Well, it's pretty much the same in everything. It's not any different. We've really shifted the roster quite a bit, and we've done it with the individual people that have come into the program and their mentality that has already added to the kind of way that we like to go about it. Landon Roberts has been a big factor for us, coming in. Great attitude, great mentality, tough as hell, loves the game, and just brings instant connection to leadership. Jeremy Chin has been a magnificent factor. Eric Stokes has already lit it up and playing corner. You just love what he's doing. And so we've had influence from guys. Ian Thomas has had a tremendous game with us. Kind of feels like he's kind of been reborn again, and with an already stout tight end group, he gives us a new factor. Raheem Mostert also, attitude, experience, background. These guys they're making a point, and of course Gino has been an enormous factor to fit into all aspects of what we stand for. So there's been an infusion here, and so it's really exciting. Like as you point out for John and I to put it together. There's some guys in this class that we drafted that not other people. I think few people would have seen them the way we see them, but they're bringing a profile to us that gives us a chance to also have a big influence on the roster and all that. And we're really excited about. Darian Porter has looked really good. Dante Thornton has looked really good. Both the two offensive and defensive linemen that we took, all four of those guys are factoring in already with athleticism and movement and attitude. So it's been exciting now, and I kind of hate to see that we only got 3 days left. I kind of keep going.
Yeah.
Let's just roll this thing into camp.
Yeah.
Got to give the fellas a break. So.
Right, for sure. Talk to us a little about Gino and your relationship and how you guys lead together. Had great success.
Okay, thanks.
In Seattle.
We had a big background because for the longest time Gino didn't play.
Right.
And so it was Pete and Gino, kind of, keeping the optimism up, and hopeful and always, looking for the opportunity to be that very next play. And Gino just embraced it right from the beginning. I've never been around a guy who was so consistently focused on, I could be playing the very next play. And so I've got to be ready. And he did it for years. It took him till his fourth year or whatever before we really got a chance to get him in the game, And so we have a lot of common language and common experience. Our communication is tops. My belief in him as a player, a person, as just a freaking thrower. He wing it now, and he's shown it throughout. He's had every opportunity with Chip's Chip's offense, sharing with Gino, it's come together where you can really tell that Gino's a big factor in it. So he's got such a consistent mentality about the way he competes, the way he goes to practice every day, the way he goes about his meeting, that he's already influenced a bunch of guys, and really positively without having to be a jerk about it. Or he just is being Gino. And when he's there and we can keep him in that, then he's got a chance to be a fantastic player. He's got some issues too now, like we all do. I got mine too.
Right.
And so Gino and I figured that out, how we can kind of get through the challenges and the hard stuff so that we can keep ourselves on track, to be really good at what we're doing. And so it's been a marvelous influence.
I know you've been doing this long enough to where very few things are going to surprise you, but you learn something new every day, obviously. But coming to this organization, which is different, did you have to lean on any of your old SC guys, maybe even like the Carson Palmers, the Matt Leinerts, Darnell being Frosty Rodgers, to get a sense of what you were walking into with this organization, or was it all just kind of,
honestly, I really grew up with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Being a Bay Area guy, and so this has not been a transition, of newness to me. I mean, Al Davis's effect on the game of football and his approach, that was right down just across the Richmond Bridge. It was just across the way. And so as much as I was a Niner fan growing up, San Francisco born and all that kind of stuff, the Raiders thing was just home base. So, that has been more thrilling to be a part of it than it has been transition to figure out. And I know that this is a little bit too far here in some regards, but Al had principles about the way he built a program.
We'll have Horowitz at 1:15 after we have that guest at the top.
However it happened, I do too, and I have a way that I do what I do, and there's a lot of crossover in our expectations and the standards that we set. Even the style of players we like to play with is very similar. You like guys that can run. You like guys that can run. You like guys that are tall and fast. That's just been something that's been really common. As simple as that is, though, there's connection to that. And so, just win, baby, is just compete, baby. And there's some things here that really have connected. And so this has not been a difficult transition. It's not been any really the expectations, but I'll give you one to get together with our alums the other night, this weekend past, and to see the connection to the past and the commitment that the organization has always made to the players is where it should be. And I don't know about the rest of the league. Where I've been, it has not been like this. I've battled for years about trying to make this connection with all of the NFL players, through the league office and stuff. I've talked about it for a long time, that our players deserve to be recognized for all that they put into it, the hardships that they undergo, the challenges, the physical challenge, all of the stuff that they deal with, and then the fact that we lose our game when we quit playing is an enormous transition for us. And our guys needs to be recognized, just like guys coming out of the military, guys coming out of their businesses. When you're done, sometimes it doesn't feel like it should be done, and so there's a lot of life left here. And so this organization, really through Al's insights and vision, has really exemplified that. And so I'm hoping we can continue to be a symbol for the league, because it's just the right way to treat our guys.
All right, that's Pete Carroll from our conversation earlier today, Raiders Media Day. All of the interviews are up on Raiders.com, the Raiders YouTube channel. I'm live on YouTube, my own channel. As we are back here in the studio, I just saw Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Raiders. He'll join us at 1:15. So I'll have the voice of the Raiders who's in town here for Media Day. Eric Allen is now with Amber Theo Harris and Paul Gutierrez. I hope you caught that at the end, what Pete Carroll said. He was with the Seahawks. That's his NFL, and the Patriots before that, as you know. No one does what the Raiders do for their alumni. So the Raiders had their health and wellness weekend here. So I think 150 to 200 alumni, whatever the number is, they get an opportunity to come here and check in with doctors and psychologists and people that know a thing or two about not only head trauma, but injuries, surgeries upcoming, people to talk to. And it's a lot of fun on the side because they have serious days where they're in breakout sessions and they're talking about their health and wellness. But then they mix in some live entertainment and they get a chance to see the coach. And you could tell Pete Carroll was blown away by that. Pete Carroll's been yearning for that, not only in his life, but in the entire league, as he said at the end. That was a good nugget of information. as he's been reaching out to the league for more of that. And he comes to the Raiders, and the Raiders have that. So it's just important. But I know there's some fans saying, I just want to win. And we do. And it's June. And we're going to play games in September. But until then, there's important things that the organization is known for that they continue to do. If you want to get in, 702-365-9200. Everybody's phones broke today. I've been on the air for 5 hours. Everybody awake? Can everybody match me? I just came off L.A., rocking at a wedding here at 6:30 in the morning. Let's wake up the show. It's Raiders Media Day. You just heard from Pete Carroll, our conversation with John Spytek. We got a lot to choose from. I think Michael Mayer, that's worth replaying here today. A lot of people haven't saw what happened earlier today. We'll give you a piece of all that as we continue live from Raiders headquarters, and we are brought to you right down the road from the M Resort Spa and Casino. Who went to Luda? Who went to Ludacris at the M this past weekend, or did you go to Coldplay? We'll find out next.
It's the morning tailgate.
All right.
You know, Gino wants to have the
I'll get us to the top of the hour, and then
and he just wants to be in sync with the guy that's going to be in next to him in September. And you're seeing it from the moment he walked into the facility. He's someone that has got stuff left, and he's gotten better.
All right, chat, you got my undivided attention. Throw it at me. Throw it at me, chat.
Weekdays at 7 a.m. on Raider Nation Radio, 920 a.m.
Celebrate your 2025 grad with Raising Cane's.
Can I get a Raiders?
Graduation cane plus puppy.
Yeah, this is some new fresh Raider gear, man. Fresh. We got here, logo. LA was good. We stayed at a nice hotel called the London Hotel, which is right like a block away from the Sunset Strip. If you know the Sunset Strip where the Whiskey is and the Roxy and the Rainbow, walking distance to there, walking distance to Sunset Plaza. And, you know, you got the really big feel like you were in Hollywood with a gorgeous hotel. Wedding was in the hotel, which was great. We had a lot of fun. There was a riot going on in LA, but it wasn't where we were. But when I left and we went to the airport, you could see the police presence because of the riots that were going on. There were cops everywhere. I'm talking everywhere there were cops. And airport, I mean, it was big. Interesting, I flew Frontier Airlines for the first time. Frontier. The only problem was my gate was gate number 209. So when you got to the airport, you cleared security, and then they had to get on a bus that went on the tarmac next to the airplanes to get to some dark, deep, freaking other terminal, which was like an international terminal. So I was kind of disappointed that Frontier flew out of an international terminal. I thought it would just be walk on, walk off. So a lot of people were missing their flight because they didn't take into effect that they were going to have to walk about 2 miles to their gate after a bus ride. LAX is weird, man. You know, I lived in LA for 10 years in the Valley. I'm happy I don't live there anymore. Good place to live. Yeah, but the Frontier plane, Adam, was brand new. Brand new. I'm talking less than 6 months old. The Frontier plane did not have any screens to watch anything, or you could not move your seat back anywhere on the plane. I thought that was kind of weird. Yep, the riot looked pretty serious when we left. Any breaking news today? I got a Mad Dog show tonight. I got a lot of radio today, 5 hours of radio and 4 hours of the YouTube. Anybody here in Raider Nation want to get Jaheir Alexander or no? Son, what do you think of that? We want Jaheir Alexander, or we got enough guys there? There are some players hitting the open market. Depends if Pete wants him. Well, I'm not asking Pete. I'm asking you. Do you want Jameer Alexander?
This is John Spytek coming back.
Become a member of football's most notorious fans.
To compete. We're not making any qualms about that. Compete every day in practice. We try to fill every single position room up with as much competition as possible. There's an energy and there's an excitement here that's pretty tangible right now with the way Coach runs this program. And I think guys are feeling that. And we're in a tough division. It's not a secret to anybody. We've got 4 great coaches, great quarterbacks everywhere, and a lot of great players. But we're not going to be shy about going out there and throwing the ball out there. You're going to get the Raiders' best every week. That's what I expect. The high effort, intensity, put the ball down anywhere. We just want to play football. That's going to be the standard around here.
Turn it up. That's John Spytek. We'll have a conversation with him coming up, the new GM of the Raiders, all about competition and the type of players that they want. It's interesting. He's different than Tom Telesco. He's different than Dave Ziegler. He's different than Reggie McKenzie, but he brought in his expertise with Tampa, being a part as the assistant GM of building an organization to win a Super Bowl again, led by Tom Brady. And then he went out with his connections that he had to Denver and Philadelphia from back in the day. He just went out and got guys he trusts who are going to play bigger roles in the football personnel department. So I don't know a lot of these gentlemen yet. I look forward to meeting them on the road when I go to events and host events here with the team. But they loaded up. They loaded up on executives. They loaded up on draft picks. But the question is, will the Raiders spend any money that they have remaining on specific free agents? And I don't know, there's contracts that are going to come up. What do you do with Colton Miller and signing him long-term or not? You need money to do that. You have to have money around. But I think John Spytek understands that he can do whatever he can within the budget to increase this team's roster and get a couple of more players in here. As Ian Rappaport has been talking about today, the big news is the Packers released Jair Alexander, and Mike Murphy, the president and CEO of the Packers, said we had the mini camp starting yesterday, and I think this way we wanted to have that resolved. So they got rid of a pretty good player. When healthy, is one of the good, solid, reliable veteran corners in the league. Do I believe that the Raiders need a veteran corner? They need good players. 7 seasons, Jair Alexander played. He played a lot of big games. Packers have been good over that run. No doubt about it. He's a Pro Bowler. And if the Raiders are going to go shopping anytime in the upcoming future, they want to have guys who have played at the highest level and can continue to play at a super high level. So the NFL, as media days are happening around the league, and people are trying to figure out, well, look, I can add one more player or two. This team, we just don't know. We don't know what they want to do with the little bit of the money that they have, which seems like a decent chunk to go out and get another player or two. I'm all for bringing in bodies to compete. And that's really what this organization is about going forward. The level of competition alone, just competition and the value of it, to Tom Brady, the greatest winner of all time of the modern era, and Pete Carroll from USC to Seattle, the competition means everything. So we're going to see how it plays out, and we're going to get a chance to do that. We asked a bunch of the players, too, what they're going to do on vacation, because the players get a vacation. They get a vacation coming up this Friday, and they're gone. And, there's like a 6-week moment here in the NFL where players get to go home for a couple of weeks, but a lot of them are staying here. And maybe the most fascinating thing that I heard today, and I followed up with it, if you didn't see it on the Raiders YouTube channel, was Jackson Powers Johnson decided to work out with Max Crosby. And he went into it that he's with him every day at 5 a.m. So I said to Jackson in my follow-up, I go, wait a second. What are you talking about? I mean, this wasn't a 2-week thing. that you gave it a try? He goes, no, I do it every day. So JPJ gets in here and tries to beat Maxon at 5 a.m. And he's lost 15 pounds and he's working out next to him, which is just a cool little nugget of a story that shows you the commitment of one player and everybody getting in line to follow that player. So I got a lot more to say on Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, Max, our conversation with Ashton Genty, the new look offense, the run game expectations, which are going to be really interesting. We'll recap the draft, the offseason recap overall, the expectations of the O-line, and the AFC West, because the AFC West is going to be good for quite some time. With the AFC West being that good, the Raiders have got to be at their best, just to get out of the division and go from being last in the division to try to climb their way to the top. Also, when we come back, we'll do a quick dive on Aaron Rodgers and what's going to happen with him going forward. Jared Bailey hosts the Believe in Steelers podcast. It's really good. He was also an NFL writer for the Sporting News and USA Today. So we'll go around the league in regards to all that. So Jared Bailey will join us here in about 10 minutes. We'll continue the live stream here because kind of the type of day to live stream. Also, Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Raiders, will join us at 1:15. We'll dive in with him. And then Amber Theo Harris, Eric Allen, who's never left in the building, said they'd come up here and maybe have an opportunity to sit down and talk with them. A lot of people buzzing about the Coldplay concert. A lot of people in the building went and saw Coldplay. If you went to that show at Allegiant Stadium, how was that? Sounds like it was a lot of fun. Ludacris over at the M. The sports and entertainment capital of the world is always doing something special. 1 hour down, one more to go, plus 3 hours tonight on Sirius XM 82. Mad Dog Sports Radio, the NBA Finals, the French Open, countdown to the U.S. Open, normally an event I go to a lot, the U.S. Open in golf. We'll preview that later on in the week as we continue live from the Raiders headquarters, JT, live on YouTube and all of our platforms.
5. Back in it.
Yep. Back in a minute. What's new with you? What's new with you?
Nothing much. Nothing. Just trying to get through the week.
Is it a long week or an easy week?
Long week.
How many days are you going to be here?
Probably all day.
All days? Good.
Yeah. Wednesday morning, Vince and Vinny are going to be here.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. All right, everybody. Yep. Mm-mm. Donate your car today. I've been hearing that commercial for 30 years.
Trust me, I feel you.
Truck you. Okay.
Back to the JT the Brick Show, brought to you by Modelo Especial, the new #1 beer in the U.S.
It's the JT the Brick Show, broadcasting live from the Finley Cadillac Performance Studio.
Raiders bring a blitz. He takes it off the middle, and he's wrapped up from behind. Max Crosby.
Your silver and black home to sound off for over 25 years.
Open at the 35. Racing to the 20. 10. Touchdown Raiders.
And now, here's JT the Brick.
Welcome back, everybody. JT live from Raiders headquarters. It's media day for the Raiders. We've been here all day, and the day keeps going. We got another hour to go. Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Raiders, will join us shortly as we continue. We got some interviews to play that we conducted earlier in the day. We'll tell you all about that when they hit. We heard from Pete Carroll. We got John Spytek, Jackson Powers Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on. Jack Besh was probably one of the best interviews we had. Maybe we'll play that a little bit later on in the week. So we're looking to hear from you. If you're excited about this, if you watched any of this and have an opinion on it, let me know at 702-365-9200 if you want to get through on that. And, you know, it's kind of a day today. I wouldn't call it fluff, but there's a lot of fluff today. And this is one of those days where you sit around and you go, everybody's in their uniform. Everybody's got their hair perfect. Everybody's getting their photo done.
I got him.
And everybody's ready. So media day going on throughout the NFL as I'm live from the Raiders. A lot of news coming from the Packers and important news coming from the Packers. And I wanted to make sure we got on one of the guests who knows the NFL as good as anybody, and especially what's happening with the Packers and now the Steelers, because Jarrett Bailey hosts the Believe in Steelers podcast that does very well. I'm part of the Believe family. Jarrett, thanks a lot for doing this. And let's begin with the fans first. And you're connected with them on their overall feeling of Aaron Rodgers coming to the Steelers and agreeing to terms.
I would say those who, and I say this very respectfully, I'm not trying to talk down on anybody. I think those with realistic expectations of wanting to see the team get to the postseason, we're pretty happy to see Aaron Rodgers come on board. I think, there's a lot of people who are like, why not just let Mason Rudolph or Will Howard do it? And, I very respectfully think those people are way too high on a guy like Mason Rudolph or Will Howard. And I think let their feelings for Rodgers interfere with what's best for the team. So I think for the most part, people are excited and, with good reason. He was the best option available for them. And anytime you get a 4-time MVP, even though he might not, be the guy who threw 48 touchdowns and 5 picks a few years ago, he might not, be able to play at that level anymore. He's still a guy who is coming off. While the Jets didn't have a great year, he still had a solid statistical year himself and, showed that he can still play. So
considering where the team is. They were 10-3 at one point last year before they fell off a cliff. But bringing a guy like Aaron Rodgers, the goal is to avoid that happening again. So I'd say the majority of people are pretty excited about it.
Jared Bailey is our guest. I would agree with you. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, a 4-time MVP, and completely healthy. When I evaluate these guys, Jared, the evaluation now, the numbers moved and the bar has moved because of Tom Brady at 43 winning a Super Bowl. That changed everything. And if you're not injured, I'm in Vegas with Geno Smith, who missed a couple of seasons, not because he was injured. He just was a backup who didn't get on the field, and he's become a Pro Bowler. With Rodgers, it's hard to evaluate how much he has left, but him being completely healthy, if they bring him along correctly, you're not looking over his shoulder the way Russell Wilson was at Justin Fields and vice versa. This is his last ride. This is his last stop. And knowing his ego, I would assume he wants to go out pretty high on top.
Yeah, and him and Russell Wilson are different players too. Like with Russell in his younger days, like he would run around and extend the play or just get rushing yards. And I think last year he tried to do that a little bit too much, where frankly speaking, he just can't do it anymore. That's never been, Aaron was always able to, get a little bit active, but he was never, known for being, a running dual threat quarterback. So I think their styles are different. And, when you look at what Aaron wants to do at this stage in his career, the Jets offensive line last year really hindered a lot of that. He had, I think, the third lowest time to throw in terms of quarterbacks with at least 150 dropbacks last year. And, but if you look at how he played when he had time, he was seventh in big time throws, and he had the third lowest turnover-worthy play percentage of quarterbacks with 150 dropbacks. So, he showcased his ability to still be Aaron Rodgers, and I think putting him behind the Steelers' offensive line that really doesn't have a lot of question marks anymore. Broderick Jones at left tackle is going to be the biggest one. But everything else on that offensive line, you feel pretty good about as a Steelers fan. And again, I think that just having a more stable line in front of him, and I think his style of play differing from what Russell Wilson did is certainly helpful to him as well. So, I'm sure, with Aaron and with any athlete, but quarterbacks especially, they want to be able to prove that they still got something left in the tank. And, like I said before, he had a fine year statistically last year, but his team went 5-12. So I'm sure that he would love nothing more than to prove that he can still lead a team to the postseason and win in the postseason as well, which, I think that they'll have a chance to do.
Jared Bailey's our guest. You got some content up there on Jair Alexander, who was let go by Green Bay. Can you take our audience behind the scenes from that news earlier today? What you think he has left? Still a young guy in this league, but coming off an injury. How much does he have? Is this a lock guy to sign with the team that's a contender, wanting to upgrade that position quickly?
Yeah, with Jair, he's only played 14 games over the last 2 years because of injury. So with Green Bay, you kind of had to make a decision there. And so it's understandable to do it right before mandatory minicamp so you can avoid all the, awkwardness, potential fines and things like that. It made sense for both sides. We'll see how guys like Keyshawn Nixon and Valentine can do for the Packers in bigger roles now. But where he goes now, I think the Rams are a team that makes sense. They were a team that took a shot at Tre'Davious White last year. That didn't work out, so they may have a little bit of, PTSD and a little bit of hesitancy to do something like that again, just because of how that turned out. Everybody's pointing to the Dolphins, considering that they're all but certainly trading Jalen Ramsey. They're going to have a hole at cornerback. Maybe he'll go to Miami. There's other teams that would make sense. Baltimore is always taking shots at veteran guys and getting the very most out of them, so it wouldn't shock me to see him go there. When it comes to, a team like maybe, I would say New England, but, they signed Carlton Davis, so I think they're pretty good at that spot. But the Rams are the team that I circled right away, and maybe even your Raiders, depending if they want to go that route. But the Rams were the team that made the most sense to me right off the bat.
Jared Bailey is our guest. Check out his great work from This Morning News. We got media day around the league, and a lot of teams that still have depth issues are looking for players who get cut from other teams, released. They can't come to terms on a contract extension. That's a tricky part of the business because the flash says, well, that guy's been a Pro Bowl, so let's get him. But there's always a other side to the story about the contract, the injury, how fresh the player is and has something left. Not just for Alexander. That goes from players in different position groups all around the league.
I mean, yeah, like for 3 years, we did this thing around the league where it was like Odell Beckham watch every offseason.
Yeah.
Like, look, guys, like, is it 2014 Odell Beckham you're getting? That became a little bit much. And I think we've seen a little bit of that die down. But anytime a guy like Jair Alexander, who is a 2-time second-team All-Pro, he's been to, a few Pro Bowls, becomes available, it is a news story, especially in June where, we don't have too much to talk about and we don't want to get too repetitive. And if he goes to the right situation, it could pan out if he stays healthy. But there's still, guys out on the market right now who are biding their time, who have been successful, been Pro Bowlers, All Pros, what have you, especially at receiver with like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. So I think a lot of that is just, the time of year where it's like, all right, at least now we have something new to talk about. We can kind of start projecting where this guy could go. So for the most part, I think it's just, circumstances more than anything.
Back to the team you also cover in the Steelers. Jared Bailey is our guest. What's the real story, or what, as far as you can tell us, on Mike Tomlin? Because you can't fire a coach who continues to make the playoffs, but a coach who makes the playoffs and then doesn't win playoff games, if that's the NBA and the NHL, you get fired every single year if that's the case. But I don't think Tomlin deserves to be let go, but it's got to be pretty hot in the kitchen heading into June. We're in June, heading into July, coming up around the corner for him to not only get to the playoffs, but to win a playoff game. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the camp of they should have moved on from Mike Tomlin this offseason. But I'm also pretty aware that, the Rooneys are, frankly speaking, a cheap group, and they don't want to pay a guy to not be there. They just agreed to an extension last year. They weren't going to let him go. He'll be here through the 2027 season because that's how long he signed to be here. We'll see what happens after that. But anytime you go through different coordinators, different quarterbacks, and you have the same exact results every time, there's only so many people you can keep pointing fingers at until you got to look yourself in the mirror. And, nothing to disrespect Mike Tomlin. He seems like a great dude. But when it comes to winning in today's NFL, I think that he attempts to build a team like it's still 2008. And you can't do that anymore. There's got to be some sort of innovation. There has to be some sort of progression offensively. And, the defense is the highest paid in the NFL, or at least it has been for the past few years. And, that's fine. You can beat mediocre to bad teams in the regular season and scrape to 9 or 10 wins and sneak into the postseason. But we've seen how that goes once the playoffs roll around. You get beat badly by a Kansas City team. You get beat badly by a Buffalo team. You get beat badly by Baltimore. Like, the great teams will always beat, the mediocre teams. And the Steelers have been largely mediocre for the past half decade or so. They're just able to somehow get into the postseason because, not to say that Mike Tomlin's a horrible coach. He certainly isn't. But I do think it's completely fair to say that the game has passed him by a little bit, and he hasn't adjusted to get with the times, and that's what's preventing the Steelers from, progressing and getting on and being a great team again. So I'm personally, again, nothing against him personally. I just think that it's time, and we'll see what happens this year. I think that they can be a playoff team, and if they can finally end this playoff drought, which, by the way, is the longest stretch without a playoff win in franchise history, then great. But I'm also not going to hold my breath because we've seen a lot of the same over the past 5-6 years.
Jared Bailey, as we wrap it up, who has a better chance? They're in two different conferences to get to the Super Bowl this year, the Bills or the 49ers?
Probably the 49ers, just because of the conference they play in. I think it's a lot more open than the AFC, where, the Chiefs just always seem to flip a switch in January and turn into just an unstoppable team. I do think that the Bills, they've been on the precipice of this for the better part of 5-6 years now. Josh Allen, for my money, pound for pound, is the most talented quarterback in the NFL, and they keep getting close, but in each of those playoff games, the defense really lets him down. They've played the Chiefs 4 times in the playoffs since he's been there. The offense is averaging over 28 points a game, and they've lost all 4 games. So it's pretty easy to find where the fault in Buffalo is. And to their credit, they spent a ton of both draft capital and money on the defensive side of the ball this year in hopes of, that being the last piece to get them over the hump in the AFC. but I do think the NFC is a little bit more open, and the 49ers, if everybody stays healthy, they can rebound. They have a fourth place schedule this year. Would be a little bit easier for them to do it. But anytime you have, the reigning defending MVP, who, again, my money is the best, the most talented quarterback in the league, you're always going to have a shot. And I fully expect them to be playing at least on divisional weekend. Wouldn't be surprised to see them in the AFC Championship game again. And, as a guy who really enjoys watching Josh Allen, would love to see them finally get over the hump.
Well, a lot of news earlier today, and you have a lot of it there. Great job on all your platforms. Thanks a lot for doing this, Jared. I appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
You got it. Jared Bailey, the Believe Steelers podcast on Aaron Rodgers, also knows the Packers pretty well. So the big news is Aaron Rodgers is officially a Steeler, and I believe in Aaron Rodgers. I do. That doesn't mean I'm nuts. The guy's been great. He's one of the elite players to ever play this sport. So if I'm wrong and he's trash and he's, as you like to say, washed, that's what a lot of kids use the term, he's washed. Well, let's see. I'd rather have Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers if I'm a team trying to compete than some of these quarterbacks in the league now that you look at Anthony Richardson with the Colts or Daniel Jones, where you go around the rest of the league and say, Joe Flacco still, you'd rather have Joe Flacco than Aaron Rodgers? I think you're nuts. Now, a lot of these guys are hurt at the end. I grew up in an era where Joe Namath was injured at the end of his career. Joe Namath could barely walk. He was beat up his whole career, Hall of Fame career. So at the end of his career, he didn't have much left. One of the greatest players I've ever covered as a fan and now get to know him, Jim Plunkett. At the very end of Jim's life, long before the age of 43, Jim was battered and bruised, beat up, so many surgeries and injuries. Not Aaron Rodgers. The guy's in unbelievable shape. The ayahuasca stories and him and his health and wellness. Say what you will about Aaron Rodgers. That guy puts food in his body that makes him a great athlete. He's in unbelievable shape. And if you did watch the documentary Enigma, you'll see how he was probably the fastest pro athlete to come back from an Achilles tear. Faster than NBA players, younger than him. So his dedication is tremendous. He's a hell of a player. And again, I said it years ago. I would have picked him up at the airport if he wanted to be a Raider. If the Raiders were able to get Aaron Rodgers, when we got Jimmy Garoppolo and we had Aaron Rodgers, but then at that point in time, we were looking at a guy who wanted to play for $50 million a year. Now he's not playing for $50 million a year. It's a good value. Remember, the Raiders could have had Russell Wilson last year. Last year, they could have had Russell Wilson for $1 million total dollars. I think Devontae was making more than that a game. I mean, Russell Wilson would have been a great Raider last year. Compared to Gardner Minshew, are you kidding me? And Gardner Minshew's a good guy, but come on. So when you have an opportunity to bring in an elite Hall of Famer that's not injured, I'm for that. If you're coming off a shoulder tear and you ruptured your knee and you're coming off it again and you've done your knee twice and you're an aging quarterback, that's different. Aaron Rodgers is completely ready to go. He goes to a team last year that had a lot of controversy at the end, and they won 10 games. They won 10 games last year. So he's not going to a bunch of bums. He's going to a team that has a chance to do some good things. And for whatever reason, Mike Tomlin finds a way to do good things. Mike Tomlin's a coach that has his team ready every single game, all the time. So Jason Horowitz is kind enough to join us. He is here after a busy day so far with Raiders Media Day. I thought you left. I didn't know you were sitting there. I didn't know you were sitting there in the corner there. So we got you up.
Well, I assumed you were going to break.
No. I like to eat segments. I'm
Okay.
That's seriously, because you've been doing this a long time. Doing a solo radio show, when I look at the whole hour and they say, well, you want to go to break, I try to get 2 to 3 more minutes so I can shave 2 or 3 minutes. Do you know what I mean by that? You get that as a radio.
I do. I understand. By the way, I also like this like old school radio mic, 1950s, 1960s. I saw that. Yeah.
It's
it
fun.
looks like I started to show the kids Star Wars the other day and then realized that it's probably too advanced for a 4 and 8 year old, but this looks like C3.
It's held up in my backpack over the years. What was your takeaway from today? You joined us for a while. You got a chance to see and talk to coaches and players. Do you feel like this team is going to a new level, next level? How do you describe it?
I don't know that I would get that from walking around at media day.
Pete Carroll, John Spytek.
No, I think it feels different, right? I mean, this is my 4th year, right? Going into year number 4, and I have been part of this recent turmoil from Josh McDaniels to Antonio Pierce to now Pete Carroll and different GMs along the way and all the different offensive coordinators, right? There's been a lot of changeover, all the quarterbacks that this team has gone through the last 3 years. So it does, at least for that perspective, feel a coach that's got receipts, a quarterback who later in his career has become one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league right now. Not of history, but the last 3-4 years certainly has been the case. Knows the coach. An offensive coordinator that's not someone who was struggling the year before somewhere else, but is an offensive coordinator who's thought of as one of the more innovative in college recent memory, and just won a national championship and had success as the head coach of the Eagles for the first couple of years from an offensive perspective. So there's excitement there. And, you bring in Ashton Genty, so you have flash. So I do think it's different in terms of why there's excitement.
Gino, you mentioned, I find myself not defending him. And because early in his career, I was really hard on him. He was a backup. He came in there from my New York roots watching him. I didn't think Gino would have the impact that he's had the last couple of years. As you're going back at the tape and studying what he's done, how much do you think he has left to play at a very high level, if not elite?
Go back to what you just said about there was a point. So I have to go back and look, but I think his first year in Seattle was 20 or 21, maybe something like that. But I bet if you would have asked the year before he became a starter and a good one in Seattle, is Geno Smith still in the league? I bet you a lot of people wouldn't have had any idea where he was playing. Because I remember having that conversation with somebody. Remember, I live back east and a lot of Jets fans around. So he was with the Jets, he was with the Giants, but it really wasn't until Seattle that it became someone who's going to be a memorable quarterback in the league for the right reasons. And he's a consummate professional. He was okay. So this is where this is where they don't have to do this. Like, there's certain things that players have to do. They have to take their headshots. They have to do hey, I'm Geno Smith, West Virginia, blah, 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 that you see on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football. They have a couple of other those type of things. He did 2.5 hours. He didn't have to do 2.5 hours, JT.
He did.
And he was smiling for as much as I saw him walking. Like, that's where you see the difference.
It seems like the ball comes out faster with him. And Pete has a level of trust because the way Pete explains all the years he didn't get on the field. Backup quarterbacks play in this league. Blowouts, they come in for cleanup duty. Or, guys get banged up all the time. He went years without playing. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Well, that's my point. Like, is he in the league? That was my point.
And when I talked about before you came on, Aaron Rodgers and the aging Brady, does that change the way you look at the quarterback from 35 to 40? Or do you think basically you should be out of the league by the time you're 37, 38?
I'm constantly told that age is just a number. I've been told that 60 is the new 50, 70 is the new 60 or whatever it is. And you're closer to those than I am.
A little bit.
As a 41-year-old. But I think, to your point about less wear and tear for not throwing a lot of passes for 5-6 years or taking a lot of hits, there's probably some of that. But the other part to that is if you do suffer an injury later on, you just mentioned Aaron Rodgers and how fast he came back. Is your body able to do that?
You nailed that.
That's an unknown. Who knows, right? That's always an unknown.
What do you think of Raheem Mostert?
He's really fun to talk to.
Yeah, that year he had in Miami where he led the league in touchdowns.
Yeah.
That was no joke.
No.
I mean, short yardage, some big plays, catching the ball. And another guy that I mentioned is completely healthy. We're not talking about a guy who's just off the scrap heap. I don't know how many touches he's going to get because wouldn't you assume Ashton is going to get 20 to 25 a game just showing up?
Well, and then also do they decide to have a third down back, right? Whether that is, and you pick your guy, but whether that is Dylan Laube, who I think if you go back to last year in training camp, a lot of us thought he might be a third down back. And hopefully, you know what? I hope we don't remembering Dylan for the fumble against the Steelers and the kick return against the Broncos, which was a great one, and nothing really else in between. I hope we're remembering him for 30 catches or whatever it is, and he has an impact. Because I wouldn't want that for a guy who's worked so hard to come out of New Hampshire to make the league and then was drafted last year. But to your point, Ashton can run. He can make people miss. He looks like he's got the hands to be a 3-down back. Raheem's more, I would think, goal line, short yardage, 7-8 carries a game. I don't know. I have no idea. You know, but I would like to think that this team can run the football. So you are trying to run 35 times a game, whereas that wasn't the case last year.
Well, if you do the math and you just go Ashton 25 and Brock 10 targets, that's 35. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm going to be getting notes from you that says, why aren't we targeting Brock more?
Well,
I feel like 10's low on the JT chart.
Someone a little higher up than you, and there aren't many, walked me off the ledge with Brock one day, said, hey, man, there's a team. Like, slow down with Brock. I got a little over aggressive with Brock, but I did predict he'd have a great year.
So let's say you average, and I don't know what it would be, but let's say Geno averages 30 attempts a game, right? 35 dropbacks, 30 attempts a game, somewhere in that range. That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
I would think your top 4 guys are getting 18, 20, 30 of those, you know, with a couple else somewhere. I mean, so I would think it makes sense for you, assuming he's going to get 8 to 10 targets a game.
Yeah, the only thing that's different for me this year is Geno's number. Whatever he throws, I think that Ashton's going to eat up a lot of downs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Ashton on 2nd and 6, where it's in this league, a lot of guys throw on 2nd and 6. This might be another pitch outside to him to see if he can get 7 yards or take it to 3rd and 1, you know?
Yeah. I hope we get, and I know this fad has kind of left the NFL, but I do hope we get some more Wildcat or whatever we would call the Ashton Jenkins.
Wouldn't you expect that from Chip? Aren't you expecting as the play-by-play voice that this is going to look, I don't know if the word exotic is right, but just.
I hope different is right.
Yeah, different.
Yeah,
and
innovative.
I want to see some wrinkles in this offense. And that would segue into Michael Mayer. I mean, I don't know what I've said it on the record. I think the former regimes let him down. He just disappeared too much. Even in games where he flashed, they didn't go back to him.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case for him anymore. Whatever he went through in his personal life, hopefully it's behind him. But I'd like to see him elevate to the greatness of a player he could be.
Well, I mean, he had the game against the Jets. It was Sunday Night Football. That was, I would think at this point, has been the highlight of his young career. And I think it's also really important to remember that it's a young career.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to your point, it was week 3 or week 4 where he stepped away from the team last year and was gone for almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Not quite, but almost 2 months. And came back. And at that point, Brock had already been established and developed. And so it's now you're 1-2 anyway, which you knew going in when you draft a tight end in the first round and you took the guy before. But we just finished talking about Geno Smith. And Geno was a 2nd-round pick who many thought would be a 1st-round pick. Michael Mayer was Mike was a 2nd-round pick who was thought to be a 1st-round pick.
And they went up and got him in the 2nd round.
Yeah, but it's still early in his career, and so maybe he absolutely has that chance to be that guy.
Jason Horowitz, as we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you a college athletic question about the NIL.
Yeah.
And now that there's a number now that we could associate with that.
Well, an on-the-table number.
On-the-table number, which is a start. I mean, it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
I mean, it was back in the day when you had a fake car wash job and an envelope, but that envelope only had a couple grand in it. Now it's millions for the best players there. Has it changed the way you look at college athletics now when you prep for a game and you do a college hoop game and you're wondering, is the NIL going to 2 or 3 guys and the rest of the guys?
Well, coaches will tell you. So like when you're talking to coaches, it's now maybe this changes now with the House settlement because it's more – they know it's here. They know $20.5 million is the starting point. But remember something though, JT, that's your whole athletic department.
The whole
so if you're a football school, particularly in the Power 4 conferences, I think they expect the number to be between 13 and 15 for football alone, which means that $5 million is going to the rest of your athletic department, men's basketball, women's basketball, and then your Olympic sports. So I don't really know what that means. And the other part that I don't think, I think the other thing that this does, JT, first of all, we're going to get a lot more lawsuits. There's a lot of Title IX lawsuits that are waiting to be filed, and understandably so. But I think what this does is it brings the cheating back onto the table because in the last 3 or 4 years with quote unquote NIL, which isn't really NIL, it was all legal. So you could tell someone we're giving you $5 million and whether they got it or not, it's just a number, whatever. But now you have a limit and everything over $600 has to go through this clearinghouse. Nobody's doing that. So every single coach, basketball, football, in all these powerful, they've all broken recruiting rules before. What's to say they're not going to do it again?
Yeah, I just think if the eyeballs are going to be on you, you got to at least act like you're buttoned
There's
up.
no way that that Deloitte, who's handling all of the clearinghouse, however it's going to work, there's no way they can handle all this.
Not at all.
Not a chance.
One more, I love to end on the schedule.
You love the schedule.
I love the schedule. So if you're a Raider fan, we got Raider fans watching and listening, what is the one road game? Raiders are on the road that is a can't miss game. Like if you're saying I got budgeted for one game, I don't have my tickets or hotel room, but I got to go to.
Well, I'm going to throw Kansas City out.
Yes,
because no, I'm going to throw them out because I think I think most Raider fans would want to go to Kansas City because it's a rivalry, because maybe they played so well there the last couple of years. They won 2 years ago. Last year they should have had a field goal to try and win. So back-to-back years there against the team that's been in the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, wins the division all the time. So I'm going to throw that one away because that seems like an obvious. If I am excited to go see a game and I want to see the opposition, Washington's where I want to go because I want to see Jaden Daniels. But if I am a fan and I want to see the Raiders play really well and have a chance in an important environment with a big game to win on the road, I think it's week 1.
Yeah.
I want to see Ashton Genty before he has taken any hits against Mike Vrabel, think about it, New England just fired a coach, the Bill Belichick. They are so far removed from Brady and all these Super Bowls that they're going to be so jacked up for week 1. Mike Vrabel, this whole new team, Drake May, this whole thing. And here you come in. You got Ashton Genty. You want to see what Geno Smith looks like? Oh, by the way, New England in September? Beautiful.
Yes.
That's the one. That's the one.
It's a big game because it's the first game.
First game.
And we don't go back there much.
No.
I mean, we don't go back there much. And when we do, we got to get them early. We say that we're part of the team here, that first to have to go right back to the nation's capital on a short week after Monday Night Football, 2 big trips.
Well, and here's the other thing that you look at the other road trips for the year. Philadelphia, and I think the Raiders are going to be playing really meaningful games in December, and you would assume the defending Super Bowl champs will be too. But Philadelphia in December, I don't know about that. And then you think about the AFC South teams. Are you excited to go to Indianapolis? Are you excited to go to Houston? No. Not really. So I do think New England stands out as the one that you'd be excited to go to.
Great seeing you. I got a lot more to talk to you about. Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Raiders, kind enough to join us. When we come back, I'm just going to say pick an interview. These are one of those days. We knocked out a lot of interviews. We got Max Crosby, John Spytek, who I might want to save for a little bit later in the week, or Jackson Powers Johnson, who had a lot to say. As you know, we are brought to you by our great friends, and they do an unbelievable job for us. Mike and the entire team at La Casa Cigars. They're getting ready for the big grand reopening in Tivoli Village. You don't want to miss that next on the flagship of the Silver and Black. Yes.
I was trying to remember this.